Hi everybody, welcome to the stream. We're gonna continue right where we left off yesterday with testing. So, I spent some time yesterday fixing what we started. So, I'm gonna go real quick right here to our little repository, and you can see here under actions we have a successful build both for the web build and for unit testing. And you can see here that the unit tests, I actually separate the build and the run unit tests just to make sure that they were, you know, taken care of separately. And then down at the bottom you can see it actually ran them. All tests have passed with 104 test cases. So everything is working for that, which is amazing, which means now we get to focus on continuing to implement unit tests now that I've got fixed. One of the big issues was we had things like the headless mode having a null pointer for the loader. The loader is a unique pointer, and it was pointing to an invalid instance because in the headless mode it doesn't create a loader like an image loader, so it was just left hanging there without any way to load like images, and of course it would crash, it would segfault. And yeah, because we were referencing a null pointer and trying to run a function. Common problem, right? So yeah, that's where we ended up with, and it turns out that was pretty much all we had to do to make sure that we were fixed up. There were a few other little things, and what I ended up doing with the post commit, I'll show that real quick as well. The post commit here has been modified a tiny bit. So what we do now is we actually use so we actually zip up the assets now and send one file instead of a bunch of files. This reduces the amount of time it takes to upload everything, while also making it so we don't have to worry about like, oh, did we have certain new files or old files, like do we have to overwrite them, right? It's just all in one zip file now that gets sent over. And we actually use PSCP, which is the PuTTY SCP version that comes installed. And you can see here I include a password file as well for authentication, so it's now automated instead of interactive, which I found out if you just try to commit on an interactive prompt here, all it does is it just waits. It hangs forever, which is stupid and pointless, so we don't do that. So yeah. And then finally we do an RM to get rid of the zip file. And then on the server side, we run a cron job to constantly check and see if we have to unzip something. And if we do, it unzips it and takes care of that. So that's where we're at. And so with those tests passing, we can resume where we left off yesterday. So these are the current unit tests that are implemented, these 5 right down here. And so we're going to continue off that. That is the first 104 unit tests, which we have validated are passing both on Windows and on GCC, which I'm happy that all that's working, because that was like the exciting thing about yesterday with us trying to like build all this. So yes, I'm glad all those woes are done. We get to move on to more migrations today for testing. So in here, we got a couple more. So we've done buff, effect, enchant, and engine. So now we are on the file test. This is going to be a relatively small unit testing set. So the process we have been using is we'll, of course, create a new CPP file in our game project. And then we simply copy paste the contents of the previous unit test file as a starting point. We get rid of CPP unit test, both the namespace and the header include. Hi there, Kyle. Welcome to the stream. Nice to see you again as well. Thank you. That's okay. It's nice to see you again. So yes, we were working on implementing a new unit testing framework. We've been migrating all the code from the old unit testing framework to a brand new one, which works very well. And the biggest appeal is that it also builds in my continuous integration inside of Git actions. So we now have the runner doing unit testing as well and making sure that all tests pass every time we commit. So that is absolutely wonderful. And what I've been looking for a long time, I talked about it a lot on stream, but I didn't expect to actually get it implemented. So I'm just happy to be at this point. Yes, that is super fantastic. And so we're doing the migrations now. So there's a few things we have to change. And of course, with the different framework comes different like function names and such. So for example, I actually have a macro on top of the macros called test. We put inside the class fixture as we learned the proper terminology of it yesterday. So yeah. As for myself, I'm doing okay. Yes. I know I haven't been streaming for about a week and a half, but it's not because I haven't been like well or anything. It's actually, oh, this isn't supposed to be test, by the way. This is supposed to be the constructor. But it's just I've been busy working with like my game's composer to design music. He's been coming over and we've been working on the project together. So yeah, that's why I haven't been like streaming lately. But we've had the chance to stream at least yesterday and today, so that's nice. Okay, so constructor for setup, and then we have our destructor for tear down, which is down here for whatever reason. I am still learning C++. Excellent. Aren't we all? Okay, so constructor and destructor here for setup and teardown of our test class. And then for these, there's only 2 test methods, so this one's relatively easy to do. I won't even have to use the automatic parser this time because yesterday we made like a tool, a very small like tool that modifies, like we basically copy paste our source code into as input, and then it will output like a formatted version, kind of steering towards the new syntax. But in this case, it's so short that I'm just going to manually do it. So you'll get to see all the steps regarding that. So for anything that is assert or equal, they now become require macros, like so. Anything that is assert exception now becomes require, I think requires or require throws as you specify what you want to run. So in this case, it's trying to load this test sprite, which is invalid. So it's supposed to throw an exception, and then we're expecting our throw to kick in for it, so we expect a runtime error. So that's how that one works in the new framework. And then we also have assert expect exception. So again, same thing. And this time we're just trying to read a data file, like so, expecting another runtime error. Don't need the semicolon. And then for these requires, they are supposed to be a condition now to determine if they pass or not. So we get rid of the argument commas and replace them with these. For the ones that have true equals, these are just going to be booleans, so I can take out the true equals. And then finally, we get to remove all these like comment things. Unfortunately, it doesn't support them, at least not in this way. There are ways to do it in this framework, but it's not really necessary. So I've just been removing them, honestly. And there we go. That's pretty much all the tests written. The only thing I have to do now is insert a comma to end a class declaration, and this should be ready to go for unit testing. So I'm going to go ahead and rebuild the project. and then it's going to pop up in Test Explorer. So this is what the new tests look like. This macro actually concatenates the class name with the test name just via token combining. It's just a macro syntax here. It's just doing some token combining. So you see here, it calls test case method, doing CL with, adds the little brackets around the class name, followed by concatenating the test case name as two strings. The strings then get turned into a function name. Okay, so we had a successful build, which means these two should have popped up under here. And we can go ahead and run them real quick to make sure they work. Or if they fail, then something went terribly wrong. They shouldn't fail, simply because we intended them for them to pass, of course. So unless we didn't implement them right, like during the migration, that shouldn't be a thing. So hopefully they work fine. So we can see the second one fails. Let me see why. So required throw as... So it just failed to throw effectively because this file is not supposed to exist. So there's no way it shouldn't have thrown, right? I have a theory, and I think it's from something I broke very recently. So we're gonna see, right? Because I don't think there's anything, yeah, like the game didn't load incorrectly or anything. So this is actually a regression from something I changed last night. When I was updating the code to work for the headless mode, we can see here, it actually returns an OK code if it fails to load. If the loader is a null pointer. I think I did this to prevent the game from like crashing when this occurred, because in headless mode it's supposed to be okay, right? So maybe in theory we should expect that this passes, but only in headless mode. But normally it should fail because this sprite doesn't exist. So maybe we should, like, I don't know what we should do here. This is a little tricky. Like, I want to test that it actually can't find this file, but the R code returns the wrong thing. So I'm not sure what I should do here. I think I should change all the calls to this instead so that it's proper. And this should actually return a fail code instead of an OK code, because it doesn't make sense for it to return an OK code when it wasn't OK, right? That doesn't make any sense. So let me look at the enum real fast, make sure it's called fail and not something else. Yeah, so fail is here. So we have no file as well, but we don't really care about that. So essentially we should expect it to now runtime error because of the fail. Is that true? Like, okay, so if it calls load from file, it should still try to see if the file exists, right? And then if it doesn't exist, that's when it would fail. So it's like, even if we don't load the image, we still want to check if it exists. So here we can see we have get case insensitive file name. This is going to try and return a path that matches the file name. And if it can't find it, it actually returns a warning. This is the throw that's supposed to happen. It can't find the file. So we're expecting for this function to execute regardless. So I would argue that this needs to actually run in here before returning. And regardless of what it returns, like, I guess we could return OK here because we're assuming a headless mode, but we still want to run it to make sure the file actually exists. So that should fix the logic for that unit test and keep everything still working the way it's supposed to. It's a bit much, but it was a modification I made last night just to make sure that unit tests are compiling proper on GCC with the headless flag enabled, but obviously that caused issues with actually loading images because we're not caring about loading images in a headless mode setting because we're not displaying graphics, so we don't do that. So I'm just waiting for it to rebuild now. I modified a major header file, like the actual game engine header file, so we have to recompile the entire thing. So it's just gonna be a minute, but it'll be pretty quick. Also, I noticed my unit test run times have gone way down. Like, they are almost half a second now versus like 2 seconds. And I think it's attributed to not having to load the graphics anymore, because now it's running in headless mode. So the loading all the graphics was actually taking forever, and is not needed for a unit testing environment. Like, why are we loading the graphics? We just want to see if the graphics exist, and that's really it. So I didn't realize that, and I'm like, why are my unit tests so much faster now? I'm like, oh, that makes actual sense, right? It actually is because I'm not loading stuff I don't need to anymore, which is dumb on my part. So let's go ahead and see if this unit test now succeeds. It should. Okay, so now it passes, which is great. And so we can do a commit here that we've implemented the file tests, or migrated file tests. This is release build 13488. Release build 13488. Great. Okay, and then we're on to the next unit test. Like, this is pretty easy, and I'm really happy that it's really not that complicated. Obviously, if we had more unit tests, we would use our little converter thing we made yesterday, but otherwise, yeah. So next up is item tests. So we got 3 more files to do. We're gonna try to knock them out before the end of stream today, which I'm hoping we get to. I'm gonna try adjusting this a little bit. There we go. All right, so item test time. Once again, we're gonna add a new CPP file called item tests. Copy paste the contents, and then the first thing we're going to do, remove the CPP unit test framework using call and the include header. Change this to be a class instead. Wrap it around in, well, actually the open brace is right there, so that's fine. And then we close brace around cleanup, because that's going to be the destructor. Everything else is going to be outside of the class. Have to get rid of the extra braces. Add a semicolon to the end of that closing brace we added earlier, because that's the end of a class declaration. Let's fix up indentation a little bit. And this one will become the constructor for initializing tests. And then we have the destructor here for cleaning up the tests. And then down here, we're gonna fix indentation. Go ahead and replace test method with test. And at the same time, we'll also go ahead and fix up inside a little as well. From the open parens, we'll go ahead and add the item tests class along with the comma and an open quotation mark. So with that, we're also going to replace assert r equal with require. And then that should get a lot of them, but not all of them. I'm looking for any more types of asserts that we might want to replace now. There's some is falses here. So the is falses will turn into require, but with a not. So we're just going to take all these, and inside the parens, we're going to add an exclamation point to negate that logic. And then we have expect exception, which becomes a require throw as. And then we put the code to run inside the first argument, and then the exception inside as the second argument. Funny enough, we just use a generic exception here. And then see if there's any other types of asserts. There's is true, which just turns into require. No extra work needed there. And then we have assert fails, which turns into fail on this side. I'm also going to remove the wide string indicator because we don't need to use wide strings for the strings. So I'm just getting rid of that. And with all of that changed, we should be in a good position to now run. There's another exception. Required throws as. And then check for, or try to run this function, expecting a standard exception when ran. Okay, any other asserts we should know about? Looks like all asserts have been taken care of. So the next thing I do is I take all my tests and I'm going to go ahead and feed them into the little program we made yesterday. It's called, I think it's just called comma parser, but it does more than parse commas, I promise. We wrote it yesterday as a little tool to help us with the migration because some of these, as you can see, there's a lot to adjust. So doing all this manually is kind of a pain. So what we do is we insert the code we want to modify into input. I don't see Visual Studio Code open. I'm going to reopen it real quick because I had our files from yesterday. So I'm going to open, we have to go back to source, comma replacer, input. So we insert the code we want to modify into the input file. Then we run the program. It's going to do a couple things and then it spits out the modified code in output, which we can then take and paste back into Visual Studio, and we should have some more modifications done. So some of the things it's done is it's added the equals equals instead of these being separate arguments. And then for anything that was a wide string before, it's now just gotten rid of it at the end so that they are proper with the macro. The macro only accepts 2 arguments, so the third argument used to be a string, which it doesn't accept, so it's been killed off by the script as well. One thing I like to do for cleanup after this is I set true equals equals to just be nothing because it's just a Boolean function checking if true. And then for false, we like to take it and add a not instead. And so that takes care of those 2 scenarios. And then after that, we're looking for any C strings because we found out we can't compare C strings and normal strings. So if there are any comparisons related to that, we have to make sure we get rid of them. We also have to get rid of any W formats because W formats, well, this is all for, again, the extra logging when it comes to each test, which we're not going to use anymore, because they are no longer allowed arguments for this test framework. So yeah, we're looking for any C string conversions. And if we have any that are for the actual require, like in this case, then we have to adjust because we can't actually compare, a C string to standard string. So it actually just doesn't work, we found out yesterday. So luckily, we can compare just the normal string. So W format actually returns a wide string, so I'm actually going to just switch to normal format now. We don't need wide format anymore. So that's that. Is this a macro? Please don't tell me that turned into a macro. I hope there's no macro called format in here. I would be pissed. But then again, this one wouldn't work either if that was the case. It doesn't look like that. Kind of looks awkward, doesn't it? A little bit, maybe? I don't know if that's like the template parsing engine. Include format in MSVC. Isn't format... Okay, yeah, it's coming from that, so I think that's correct. At least I hope... the coloring is throwing me off. I think IntelliSense has not caught up. Yeah, I don't think IntelliSense is caught up. So I'm not too worried about that. Enchant list doesn't look visible to me in here. Yeah, it's inaccessible, which means it was probably a friend class before, I'd imagine, and it's probably not anymore. As in, like, we would have to put, like, item tests, but if we do that, like, does that even exist, right? will that work? Because we were having issues with it before not actually going through, which means we would have to make it public or something. Or we have to do this like trick where we're like, okay, well, we need it to be accessible, right? It was enchant list. So right now it's under the private tag, but we can say if defined unit testing, we can add a public tag just for unit testing purposes, so we have access to it. Because it does need it for the sake of testing. I don't want to wrap the actual define in there, just the public tag. We could keep it like that. So that would be the fix there if we wanted a short way to make it work. It would make what's below public though, so I think we would also do this afterwards. Kind of janky, but it is what it is. Or we can just add another private here for the sake of doing that. I guess that would be fine. It's a little sloppy, but it does get the job done. And it looks like there are more compile errors. So let's start from the top here and see what we got. So here, map type doesn't look visible. So again, a lot of these were probably friend class things that need to be adjusted now. And we're probably going to just have to add more if defs to get this to work, because I don't want to expose everything that we don't really need to expose, right? There's like no reason to. If this is just for unit testing, let's just give it a temporary method of exposure and keep everything private so we don't end up writing code that we don't really want to accidentally mess things up with. I think that's only fair. And this would have no effect if unit testing is undefined, of course. So that fixes that one. Then we can go down here. And we got... Not you. It looks like there was an equals. So that's interesting. I don't know why there's an equals there. I'm just going to double check what the code was originally, just to make sure we're not missing out on anything. Okay, so yeah, somehow it has an equal sign for no reason, and I have no idea why it did that. So I must have, like, when I was doing my find replaces, I must have rushed and did something by accident. So then down here, what is going on? That looks fine. Come on, IntelliSense, bear with me here. It says inventory loadout items used isn't accessible. Okay, that's fair. So we have to go to the inventory class. And once again, looks like we have a friend class issue. So this is for loadout items used. So let's find that. So this is the declaration. And then, as we can see, private again. So ifdef unit testing. I really wish we could macro this. This would save us so much time. But I found out we can't put macro pre-processing tokens inside of a macro, which is really dumb. I really don't like that we can't do that, but it is what it is. It makes sense why we can't, because it probably makes for very confusing, like, macros processing stuff. And I think it also, like, I was thinking about, I'm like, how would you even parse it, right? You'd have to, like, do some weird stuff with that. So in that sense, I think it makes sense why that wasn't a thing, but also it would just be super confusing. Okay, so that's fixed. What else we got? Give me more. Give me more. Looks like there's a couple more. So that's semicolon? Missing semicolon. Okay, there's another equal sign here for some reason. And then, yeah, it looks like it must have been my auto parser thing. Like, it must have saw something and added an equal sign. And I'm like, that's silly. Whoa, what is going on here? This is even weirder. I don't understand how that could have happened. It looks like there's two of these. Yeah, it looks like something got deleted. That's not good. I need to... If my parser is, like, messing up, then we're gonna have issues. Alright, so what originally was this supposed to be? Maybe it wasn't a require false, it was just... Okay. It looks like originally... we're looking for enchant test check, which is right here. Assert is false, and then there's the for loop. I don't know why it's like duplicated. That's just weird. What? How did that even happen? Okay. All the rest of the code looks correct. So, and it's done it here again. There's something going on. Okay, so I can imagine, like, let's see. So what kind of bug would this lead to? So, oh, we changed this because at first we were looking for, like, we said, okay, require might have means we have a comma. That's not necessarily true. Yeah, so I made that assumption, and now I have to take it back because it might not exist. If it doesn't exist, it's just going to add both strings to each other with an equal sign in the middle. So that makes sense, because it's just going to go to end pause, and then it's going to do it again. So if it's not equal to end pause, then we do the line substitution thing. Okay. So I'm glad that was found. Okay, good to know. I'm like, why are we getting this weird, like, duplication? Now I understand. It's for any standalone conditions. Okay, here, this is still not working out. This is a Boolean. What? So, improvement exists, cannot find a step. So we're seeing if improvement exists is true? Is that what we're saying? I assume that was what the original request was. So this is for test enchant test check. Does obtain duplicate is true. Okay, right here. Does improvement exist? Right. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so that works. Require that. And then down here, again, the equal signs are killing me out here. Get rid of this one. And then down here we have test in range. So once again, this test in range thing has changed. So no longer do we require the comments at the end, and it will still test things within a certain range of units. Cool. So that's all the tests converted for item tests. We'll go ahead and give them a run once this all compiles, and we'll go from there. Yay! And then we are down to two files? 2 files to go. So I hope we finish. We got about 25 more minutes of code time. So hopefully soon. Oh, so here's the cool thing we can do now, right? So if we go to our web browser and we go to our actions, that commit I did earlier for file tests, we can see if they worked. So we can see it actually failed. Why did it fail? Of course it fails when I'm actually streaming. Let me see what happened. What expected an open parens for function style cast or type construction in file test line 16. We like just wrote this, right? So and expected an open parenthesis for function style cast. That's a little weird. That's a little strange. I don't know why. Oh, you know what? Required throws as in the mscripting build does do something different. So you can see here that, like, we have these, like, made-up things to get rid of, yeah. Like, we don't want to run these lines for, what do you call it? For the mscripting build, because it's not trying to test anything. So, because of that, we need to actually add a blank version of this that won't do something. And so, yeah, and I wonder if the same is going to happen to fail, because we didn't really do anything for that. At least I don't see anything for that. But yeah, it's going to be condition and what's this, exception, and we just wanted to report nothing on that line. Did you know that someone can steal all of your code? Yeah, it's open source. They are allowed, I wouldn't say steal, more like use or learn from. It's not really stealing if it's provided, right? Yeah, like this is an open source project. Well, it's an open source game. Okay, so we can see the run unit test here failed also, so I'm interested to see what happened there. It's funny that when you add new feature, it breaks another thing. Right. So it looks like the 2 file tests we added did fail here, which is interesting. So now I want to know why. Let me see. So image loads proper regardless of case sensitivity failed. Oh god. Browser's freaking out from Zoom. Error recursive directory iterator cannot open. Okay, yes, that's the point. It's not supposed to open it. It's supposed to fail. Wait. Oh, no, it's not supposed to fail. It's supposed to be able to figure this out. Do I not have a title transparent.png? Did I, like, forget to... No, we do, right? Like, it should exist. It should know. So the whole point is that test is supposed to test for case insensitivity. That's, like, the whole point of making this thing. But, yeah, it cannot open directory because it can't find it, but it's trying to run the case instance. That's interesting. We're gonna have to debug that one because that's a little bizarre that does that. Yeah. Okay. Well, in the meantime, the build failed. Why'd the build fail? Why'd the build fail? Item test has already been defined in a name. To be a namespace. Oh, we have to remove all the references to item tests. Yeah. Like these are all old. So that was for TMX parser. I think that's really all we have to do there. It was just trying to find a friend class in there, and yeah. I mean, I could get rid of this too. That should go away. Realistically, yeah, like the premise is this game will be released on Steam. Like it's a commercial game, but it's also open source. So in the sense of people that watch my stream and want to follow along or observe like the things I've coded for this project can go in and look at the code. You could try to build the project, but the project doesn't have the commercial assets because I can't legally distribute those. So you're left with a build that you have to supply all the graphics for, essentially, which is like part of the content of the game. So it's like, yeah, that's kind of the premise behind it. But I've always been a big proponent of like sharing code. I don't think there's really a reason to hide code. I think developers that are interested in learning and want to learn things from what I do should be able to look and explore. Because I think I do some awesome stuff and I like to share it with people. It is a really big project, so it's kind of hard to understand. But it's also hard to get into any large project that you haven't written and taken time to learn, right? Like I've been dealing with this code base for over 3 years, so it's natural that I kind of know my way around it, right? Okay, so there's another namespace definition somewhere. Looks like in test defines, surprisingly. Was not expecting this one. Can we load? Thank you. In what? Declaration of item tests in test defines.h. Oh, there we are. Yeah, we don't need these anymore. This file can disappear. Let's get rid of it. Test defines. Okay. Yeah, that's gonna get rid of quite a bit of stuff. It's probably gonna cause some other errors, because probably there were other things referencing that class in that specific namespace. There's also places that actually just open it, so we need to get rid of that in OLC Pixel Game Engine, of course. Let me get rid of these also. The other unused or transitively discovered includes. And util data file, let me see. Util is not a class or namespace name. What? What do you mean? In data file. Do we have to include it now? Okay, so it doesn't include util here, so... I think Pixel Game Engine wanted it originally and I removed it. So now it's not included there anymore, is my guess. I have Doom 3 source code, but I cannot begin because I know I will not understand anything. Well, sometimes you just gotta, like, jump in, right? Like, if I'm reviewing a code base, like, the easiest way to start is just go to the entry point, and then open up debugger, and then, well, assuming you know what the program does already, just open up debugger and start stepping, and you'll quickly discover, one, like, the flow of the program, right? Where the, like, update loop is, especially if it's a video game. And two, like, just, it gives you an idea of what the structure of the project is, and what, like, what events exist, what callbacks there are, how the update loop works. That's usually what I do to start, is like, if you know what the program does and what it looks like already, then the first thing you can do is just start at the entry point and run debugger line by line and explore and read. That's pretty much it. But yes, this is very interesting. So I do have my Linux system booted up, and what I typically do nowadays on this monitor back here is I do picture-in-picture mode. So when I flip this, it's probably gonna freak out on OBS's side, but what ends up happening is I can kind of just have it, and then I can work on it like in the background. I have a little, it's like, right now it's like in the corner, it's very tiny. I can make it larger too. But I like doing this. Just make it a little larger. And then I also have a KVM switch so that when I'm working on it, I can kind of switch between the two. So here you can see I can interact with it. So that's fun. But yeah. So I'll probably run it on that system later and do some GDB debugging. I should install RustDesk on it. That way, like what I usually used to do is, like, if I need to run some debugging, I would just... Oh, I could probably SSH into it too. That might be something I try. I wonder if I could do it right now. Let me see. Why is it still so tiny? My god. I can't see. I try to change the scale, but it doesn't work right now. But anyway, yeah, if I know what the IP is here, I can just kind of... Is it ifconfig? Okay. We're on 184. I don't know if we even have port 22 open, but we'll see. 92.168.1184. Damn. Okay. Well, it's like a simple command to enable it, right? It's like enable SSH port. UFW allow. Oh, you can literally just type the program. Okay. And then we have to reload. It says firewall not enabled. It doesn't have a firewall. Or maybe it uses a different firewall. There's another one. There's like IP tables, right? Wait. If there's no firewall, why can't I get in? Oh well. I'll mess with that later. It's just like a side thing I need to do for debugging on that system. Did I already install OpenSSH? Oh, okay. Let me just apt get it then. What is it? Literally just open SSH-server. So then, there we go. That's not my username though. Cool. Okay. So now, we can do, let's go to Adventures in Listoria. Let's pull. I don't even know if we're, let's first see if we're on the right branch. Okay, cool. So let's just pull what we got. And stash, I think, I don't know why this has changes. That's a lot of changes. What? Overridden by merge run test? Oh, you know what? It was to enable, oh, it was to run in GDB. That's all. Also, I see you don't use attributes like no discards at choice. Oh wait, first question. Why are you using a C cast instead of static cast? It's just shorter syntax, so I prefer it. I don't like the long typing that is required to type static cast. Internally, it's almost the same. I know it's not exactly the same, but my use case for it is the same as what static cast does, so that's what I do. And attributes like no discard, I do use attributes occasionally, so it's just I don't use it everywhere. I'm a little more better about const, but I'm not really that much of a proponent of the attributes, but sometimes I do. But I also have no discard, like reporting as errors, so I don't want to put it in places that I'm actually going to discard the return value, which I do often. So I only put no discard where it matters because it actually errors out, and that's really annoying and not something like, to me, no discard is only used if like I have to handle like a really important pointer or something. It's like there should be no reason for you to not need the return value. Like sometimes I just need to call a getter just to have something there. Yes, like there's the argument a getter should have no side effects, but like at the same time, I don't want to go putting a no discard on every single getter, right? Like I do put it sometimes, only when it's like really important. That's just my take on it. Okay, but yeah, we did GDB stuff here, so let me just stash this. And cannot reset index file. Unable to unlink. Oh, God. Sudo. Okay, and then let's do a poll. Git poll. Okay. So what I'm gonna need to do is I'm gonna need to compile this and then run it on GDB and see why the case insensitivity function is causing problems. So that's what I'm going to do on here. I don't really have time for that today on stream, so that might be something for either later off stream or tomorrow. The only important thing I want to get done right now is getting this finished compiling. There's a couple more places where it looks like I got rid of like the util includes at some point in time, so I need to put it back, I guess. It shouldn't hurt to put util include in here. Like, I don't think util requires OLC Pixel Game Engine. That wouldn't really make sense. It requires Geometry 2D, but yeah. Include util. I don't know why it's been... Oh, I probably deleted it because it was like doing the transitive thing, but then, yeah, I get misled. Yes, this is my own game. I've been working on this game for a little over 3 years. Of course, not like every single day for 3 years, but this project has existed for a little over 3 years now. I plan on translating my game from C# to CPP. I'm not looking forward to it. Oh, why not? C++ is great. I'm just kidding. If you're new to C++, good luck. I love C++, so I will forever hype it up. But I've also been using it for 6 years, so I'm very biased. I don't think translation is that bad. It really just depends on, like, whether your C# project was bad, right? Probably not assembly, though. We talked about this once before. I'm like, there really isn't a reason to use assembly unless you're, like, dealing with old stuff, right? Thread is required... Why did I delete the stuff in here? That was pointless. Let me just, like, undo that. What did I delete? I deleted CMath, thread, algorithm, C-string, util. Yeah, why did I do all that? That's silly. I guess the logic is that I think these are transitively being included from other stuff, but the transitive includes might be depending on this as well, so it doesn't really work out. I would have to like... There's this new feature, which I've been very afraid to click. It's called, oh crud, let me do this. But it pops up on Visual Studio when you're looking at your include stuff. It says, optimize include graph and remove unused includes, right? But if I do that, I know the includes are organized a certain way to where other includes depended on the includes from this file. So it's like, this button, I think you're gonna have to like... You're gonna have to like click it for a bunch of files if you want it to be reorganized correctly. So like, if I click it here, I've done this before and I just wanted to see like how it worked, right? I'm just like, oh, it literally did what I did. But then we saw thread was actually required from another source. So now it's gonna complain about that. And then, right? Like all these ones I removed because they were transitively included, they actually, depending on the order the headers are included, like whatever the linker chooses to do is like, or the compiler chooses to do, messes everything up. So it's really like, in order to use this feature, you'd have to change everything. Okay, player test. All right, so we just have a few more of these lingering around, like that can go away. And then we have, yes. And sound effect as well. Those two can go away. Build. Oh, we gotta get rid of this one too. There's just so much random stuff. Okay. So with this, we're probably gonna call it here for today. I know it was a short stream, but we got 2 more test files implemented and effectively, we got some debugging to do, so I've got my Linux set up over there, so I'll get to pull up GDB later and work on that. Or maybe I'll just do it on here since I installed OpenSSH. I can literally do it here, right? I would just have to... we would have to make in debug mode, not release, so I can see the actual symbols. So I would change this build type from release to debug. And then I would go ahead and run that, and that will run the make command if I type it right. And then I'll just let that run. It'll take a few minutes, and then yeah, I'll go ahead and run GDB later tonight and see what's happening. But yeah, for those of you that tuned in today, thanks for stopping by. Hope you enjoyed and have a great weekend. We'll see you next week to hopefully do some game stuff instead of unit test stuff, because we have everything pretty much done for unit testing, just need cleanup. So yeah, last few bits to implement and then we're on to more game stuff. Yay! It's been a lot of like side work for the past couple weeks, but glad to be back on schedule. So yeah. And Georgie just said hello. Well, I'm saying goodbye. So, bye everyone, take care. Thanks for watching.